Hello there, this is your biggest Lily May enjoyer and welcome to this video. So in today's video, we are going to talk about the EX weapon skill for Lily May. More specifically, just a PSA for those of you guys who are wondering, right, or who are seeing different posts saying that, hey, Lily May's EX weapon get nerfed at EX 10. Okay, so right here, this is the EX weapon skill for her. Rainfall Bliss allows her to gain attack boost every single time an ally buff her with a non-permanent stat boost. So right here, at level 5, you get a 12% attack boost. At level 10, she is able to do additional attacks on her Rainstorm Ballet to do more damage. And then at level 15, you get a 14% attack buff. So for me personally, I don't have the EX10 issue because as you guys can see, my Lily May right here is EX20. So for this skill itself, I've seen some comments talking about them losing damage once they upgraded her EX weapon from +5 to +10 or even +8 to +10. So if you are one of them, don't worry. I'm pretty sure it's just a bug because it is proven that Lily May is a meta carry for Alpha Bear. So mine was a EX15 Lily May. This guy or this screenshot over here is a EX5 or EX8 Lily May with the 2-star representation. So she's indeed good for the boss. But if you upgraded her to EX10, this is probably the issue that you'll face right here. So I have done Dream Realm with Lily May at +8 and +10, and I can't get anywhere close to the +8 score. And the extra attacks are taking longer to cast, resulting in less DPS overall. So there's probably some bug with the Rainfall Ballet, which decreases her DPS tremendously, because I've seen quite a few posts on my previous video, which is the Alpha Bear Lily May carry video, that talks about, hey, why is my Lily May doing less damage? You know, I lost a lot of damage upgrading her from EX8 to EX10 so far, and yeah, you guys are probably not the only ones. So below there are some people talking about the different observations about their own Lily May as well, so I'm not going to cover this in depth, but just know that there's currently this bug going on. So for those of you guys who are currently on the Alpha Bear boss, right, if the current cycle is Alpha Bear, right, what you can do is maybe you want to hold the EX weapon temp upgrade for a bit, wait until there's a hot fix for her EX weapon, wait until the coding is done, and then you upgrade her to perform better for the subsequent bosses itself. Because I don't know how long it will take for the developers to update this change. It could be tomorrow, right? It could be just a few hours after my video, but right, just to be safe, you guys might want to upgrade her to +8 max for now. Okay, so that's just I'll say like TLDR. It's not a you thing, it's a bug thing from the game. Okay, so next we have another post, right? So this post is also relevant to the EX weapon skill, which I think is insanely helpful. So this post over here covers all the different buffs that will work with Lily May as well as Diana's growth ability. So I like to give credit to March1392 because I was actually scrolling for the post for this one, for the EX10 one, and then I came across this being recommended, and I think this is super duper helpful. So I decided to actually cover this in this video to let you guys know about the different buffs that will affect Lily May as well as Dino. So I think from an experienced player point of view, we probably know like what are the different buffs that could help her. But I think if you're somebody who's new to the game or you're not very familiar with the mechanics, this post is super duper helpful. Okay, so let's start. I'll start off by going just directly to the different findings. So the author mentioned that, you know, he himself was looking for all this information as to what buffs will actually benefit Lily May or even Diana. So there wasn't, I guess there wasn't anybody out there to answer him. I guess he probably didn't comment on my video, so I will probably cover it if there are people that will ask me for this topic itself. But then he decided to do this himself. Really appreciate it. And then here's the post. Okay, so here are some basic information on each growth ability. So for Diano's Nectar Feast, this is the second ability, by the way. The passive allows him to gain an intoxication when receiving non-permanent stats boost from an ally, increasing 15% attack as well as 15 attack speed up to 3 stack, which can be triggered once by each ally. So this is pretty similar to Lily May. So the active allows him to drink the nectar to increase even more attack. So this is the active casting for the second skill itself. So this is the growth ability of Dino. So the same right, can be said for Lily May's Rainfall Blaze. So once she receives a non-permanent stat boost from each ally can trigger this effect once. So this buff will give her an attack boost, permanent one by the way. Right here is 12% at EX5 and then 14% at EX15. So right here for the diagonal analysis, so the .d value can be increased from skill power charms, with each charm increasing it by 1. So if you took skill power charms, this will increase the active ability attack to 25% plus 5% attack and attack speed from 25 to 6 attack speed. So this is the additional plus something is from the charm ability, but for Diurnal's case usually people go for, I think, attack speed. I think Gale Charm on Diurnal mostly, either Gale Charm or just attack, flat attack crit. I think that's most of the current builds I see. So this is good. The buff charm is good to buff skill power, but Diurnal is more of a right click character, so just having raw damage on this character or just raw attack speed is a lot stronger. Okay, so right here this is when you get the buff. Okay, but in general skill power and ultimate power charms are not worth it on this unit that applies buff values versus time values. For example, someone who would highly benefit from skill power charm is Brutus, as it brings its indomitable ability from 8 seconds of damage immunity to 14 seconds of damage immunity. Note that as the name only applies ultimate power charms apply to ultimate abilities and skill power charms apply to other abilities. Okay, so basically TLDR, right? Skill power charm, ultimate charm not really good for Diurnal, who is more normal attack centric, who is more like do damage centric, because they would rather have just raw attack stats or just raw attack speed so they can attack faster. Especially for Diurnal, having more attack speed on Diurnal is not just more damage, it's more damage attacking through multiple enemies, which further amplifies his damage output. So that's why personally I think Gale is probably the best for Diurnal, right? I don't think skill power should be the way to go, but I think it's just a good TLDR to know that hey, there's this like additional bonuses with the magic charm ability. Okay, so for Lily May it's the same one, but Lily May doesn't get that skill power ultimate power because hers is an EX weapon, so she doesn't get from there. So that being said, these are the different things that works with both Diurnal and Lily May. So blah blah. Then after, so this is a testing done by March 1392 over here. Okay, so that being said, after testing various artifacts and heroes in AFK stages, here is the list. Note, I do not claim this to be perfect, but there hasn't been a guide around for this anywhere else. Don't worry much, right? Even if you're wrong, I'll try to help you correct it. But right, this is a very highly accurate list, by the way. I went through it myself. So the first one, Enlighten spell applies to Diurnal, does not apply to Lily May. So when she starts the battle and instantly uses Rainstorm Ballet, she just dodged the skill completely. Okay, so Enlightening spell works on Diurnal because Diurnal stands on the spot at the start of battle. So for Enlightening spell, it applies to the unit after, I'll say like 0 point something second. So even with Enlightening spell in your team, right, if the priority or if the unit from the enemy side is a little bit faster, if you get controlled and shifted in position, that unit who is supposed to be the Enlightening spell like receiver might not get a buff because he could have been repositioned by Iron, for example. So for Enlightening spell, because for Lily May at start of battle she will use her Rainstorm Ballet, she disappears from the spot. That's why the buff will go to the next ally who fulfills the Enlightening spell condition. So that's why it only applies to Diurnal but does not apply to Lily May. There's a situation where Diurnal might not get it. That is, like I mentioned earlier, when Diurnal is repositioned before the Enlighten spell kicks in. So that's just a fun fact for you guys because I play a lot of Arena. So there are times where Enlightening spell will fall on the wrong ally, but that is, I'll say, far in between. Not a lot of times, but it happens. So as long, right, as the unit is not there to fulfill that Enlightening spell last unit condition in that tile, then the unit won't get buffed. So that's why it only applies to Diurnal but not Lily May, because Lily May will instantly disappear at start of battle. So Evocation spell does apply to both Diurnal and Lily May. So yeah, because Evocation spell is not a permanent buff and it applies on a regular cycle and it's all different buffs. So for this one, I'll say that what we should test is whether or not the different buffs will actually give you multiple stacks. But right now, I think for Evocation spell itself, we can't really tell because there is no indication whether or not that evocation cycle spell actually increases attack like within the battle itself. So personally, I am not very sure whether or not like 4 different cycles on evocation spell give you 4 stack on both Lily May and Diana, but the evocation spell very first buff that gives stats for the unit gets through. I don't think the shield one gets through. I think it starts off on the attack one, yeah, which is the second cycle, because shield is technically not a stat boost. So that's for evocation spell. So for evocation spell, there's actually 3 stat boosts. So one is life drain, life steal, one is attack buff, one is haste buff. For the shield one, I'm not sure whether or not shield is considered a stat buff, but I don't think so, because it doesn't give any stat, right? It's just an additional HP shield. So there's a dashing spell. So dashing spell is attack speed buff, so temporary fulfills the conditions as well. Light heal spell, okay, so this is when you proc the defense buff on these 2 units. So light heal spell has an active component that actually, let me just go back into the game for this explanation so that you guys can understand also. Okay, let me come to here. Okay, so for those of you guys who are not familiar with the artifacts, let's just run through them. So for evocation spell, we have all these different buffs on different intervals. So like I mentioned, there's actually a shield one, right? There's attack percentage, so you will get the buff on the attack percentage because it's a stat buff that is temporary. Same thing for the life drain, same thing for the haste, but the only thing I cannot confirm is whether or not each of these cycle actually provides 1 stack or not, so that's something that I do not know as well. And then for light heal spell has an active which increases physical defense and magical defense to 16%, right, for the allies affected by the active. So for this one, it's a temporary stat buff for the unit, so therefore it also procs Lily May as well as Diana's buff. Now one more thing, which is the dashing spell. So this is the attack speed one. So this is a temporary attack speed buff every few seconds, so it's definitely compatible with the buff itself. So these are the 3 seasonal artifacts that the author was talking about. Okay, so let's go into the other supports. Okay, so Diana, yes. So I think for the unit side, if you have any units that provides a buff that is only for a few seconds, that will fulfill the condition of non-permanent stat boost. So if the skill states that until the end of battle, then that is considered a permanent stat boost, and that's where they don't benefit Lily May nor Dino. Okay, so that's just a TLDR, but let's see what are the different units that can buff Lily May and Dino. Okay, so Damien, yes, yeah, Damien is one of the most commonly used with the 2, and Damien is a good counter to Lily May right now, so very good unit if you want to use it against Lily May, right, against opponent Lily May. So Phase as well, right, Phase ability also has a buff in the ultimate ability as well as the second ability. Very underused unit, but she does have some buffing capabilities, obviously overshadowed by the many powerful buffers out there, like for example Hewin's heal with the seasonal skill itself, and also like our dear friend Smokey, right, as well as Damien over here. So that's one. Faye. So we have Hammy. So okay, Hammy and Hewin, right, I mean Hammy and Faye, they actually are very beginner-centric characters because they have a lot of different mechanics on them that teaches you the basics of the game, but they have some sort of buffing utility for the unit in the event if in the future there's some sort of like creativity competition where we use like all the underpowered unit to form teams to take on challenges. So that would be pretty fun. So Hewin, yes. Okay, so Hewin has a temporary haste buff as well as the seasonal buff, by the way. But I think the seasonal buff is permanent, so it doesn't trigger that. But the haste buff from her skill itself does trigger. So Coco, yes. So Coco is her ultimate as well as the fulfilling phase. Okay, so Coco is one. Ludovic. Okay, so Ludovic 1 does not apply to either Dino or Lily May through normal means, except through the current Song of Tri-Season buff. Oh, that's because Ludovic doesn't have any buffing skills in his kit except for the seasonal buff, so that's why it does not apply. Yeah, Ludovic doesn't have any sort of buff. Ludovic is more of a healer slash damage dealer. So let me just run through the kit briefly and then show you guys. Yeah, so obviously Ludovic doesn't have it, but yeah, good pointer. Okay, so Ludovic right here doesn't have any sort of buffing. Okay, so these are all damage and healing, so therefore there's obviously no temporary buff included. There's only this seasonal one. So this one, like I mentioned, it's the the seasonal skill same as Hewin. So for Hewin's case, so if you go to Hewin, right, Hewin also has this, but Hewin has another buff of the Revitalize over here. Wait, not Revitalize, I think the EX weapon. There's a haze buff. Oh, yeah, over here. Enhanced Force grants the heal ally 30 haste for 6 seconds. So this is a temporary stats boost, so therefore healing works as well. So gotta find something. Okay, let's go back. So we have Nero and Rowan. So Nero doesn't have any buff as well, because Nero doesn't have any temporary buff, no buff on this unit, so doesn't apply. Rowan, here says does not apply to either Dino or Lily May. Okay, because the M+ ability Great Bargain is a permanent stat boost. Okay, let's take a look at Rowan here first. So if you go to Rowan, let's see, I have Rowan right here. So Rowan's M+ ability, right, permanently increases physical defense and magical defense. Yeah, so that's why it's not a non-permanent stat boost, therefore it doesn't apply. Okay, so let's continue the list. Highly accurate so far. Smoky definitely applies, obviously, because Smoky one is the most powerful temporary buff, but goes on pretty consistently. Okay, so for Cassidy, Cassidy is not Cassidy does not apply because her buff is not technically a stat buff. It's like I'm gonna give this ability to my ally whenever they attack, I do more damage, but it's not a stat buff, so therefore Cassidy does not apply. Okay, so for those of you guys who are wondering what buff Cassidy has, I'm just gonna run through the skill for Cassidy. So Cassidy has a buff on the ally, right, through the tidal blessing, or rather more basically we have the tidal strength. So right here, bless the ally, but this is not a stat buff, this is more like a enhanced Cassidy's attack buff based on the attack dealt by my teammate. So therefore this one doesn't give Lily May or Dino the buff. And next, Laika. Okay, so Laika applies. Okay, so Laika does not work on Lily May for the very same reason as Enlighten spell, yes, but I think for Laika's Imperial Blessing, she does a multi-cast later on. Yeah, I think it's not on first cast itself. Let me just check it briefly. So this is the skill, Imperial Blessing. So it has a 12-second cooldown. So at the start of battle, she will trigger an attack speed increase because Dino is always there on the battlefield. Dino will benefit from it, but for Lily May, she might be able to benefit from it if the next cast of blessing actually goes on her when she's in the battle itself. Okay, so that's for our dear Lily May right there. So it does work, it's just that she must be there when this blessing kicks in, that's all. Because Lily May is flying all around, so therefore there might be a chance that she doesn't get a buff. But I think it does apply to both of them. I mean, if the buff lands specifically. So for Lumon's case, Lumon's seasonal ability does not apply, yeah, because it's a permanent damage increase. So their seasonal ability is Heart of Unity, which is a permanent buff, so therefore it doesn't apply. So Parisa's ability is actually really good because Parisa is what they need. Okay, so Parisa is a pretty used unit in the past because of her ability to do damage as well as this attack speed increase. So this is exactly what Dino need, because you increase Dino's attack speed as well as normal attack damage for 10 seconds, which is quite a long temporary buff. And this is a temporary buff that works with Lily May as well, because if you're able to land it on her, that is because Lily May likes to fly around in the battle. So the thing about Parisa and Lily May is Parisa's buff is quite RNG based. There's no like a specific coding. It's like one nearest ally, but your nearest ally might actually change based on where they move, where they jump. So at the point when she's casting this, there's a possibility that Lily May might be using the ultimate flying in front, so therefore she might not be the nearest ally. At the start of battle, when she first jumps around, there's also a possibility of her missing this skill. So it does work with Lily May, but it is relatively unstable. So therefore you don't see that many Parisas running around with Dino as well, because if you do manage to reposition Parisa or Dino in battle, then this nearest ally buff might be falling on another ally. So that's one thing to take note. But it's true, the list is still right. So okay, So Fresto do not apply. Fresto's buff, both the energy regen as well as damage reduction, is a permanent buff. Satrana does not apply because the spark ability is a permanent buff as well. Okay, so Scarlita's S+ passive, which provide defensive boost when she shields a target, works as well, but there's a little bit of RNG there. So I think it works a lot more conveniently on Diana, because Diana is standing on a spot where Lily May is more elusive. So yes, Lily May might be shielded and buffed, but there's a little bit of RNG factor for Scarlita's one, because the shield needs to fall on ally in order for the passive to kick in. Okay, so Shakir does not. Okay, Shakir does not, because Shakir's aura is not a temporary buff on the ally. It's an aura that gives the stats on the ally. So this one I'll explain why. So the author is not very sure, but let me explain Shakir's mechanics. So Shakir's EX his weapon over here, or rather the ultimate over here, allows him to transform into this state. So this one, right, ally within the range of Lupin aura gets reduced damage as well as increased haste, but there's no duration to it. So it's considered a permanent buff as long as they are within that circle of aura. So there isn't a lot of units with this aura mechanics, but Shakir's buff is technically a permanent buff as long as the aura exists. So the condition is there's a buff, it's permanent if you're within this condition, which is the aura itself. Okay, so therefore Shakir's doesn't work. And let's run through the last few units. So we have Tailin. Yeah, Tailin's buff is not temporary. Torrent buff is also not temporary as well. So therefore Tailin and Torrent does not apply. Okay, so basically, right, if you see a buff within a character that says increase attack, increase defense, increase HP, increase haste, increase lifesteal, or gives an ability for a few seconds, that is considered a temporary stat buff. Okay, if it doesn't mention any timing, or it specifically mentions permanent, for example, there's another support unit that the author mentioned over here, Reyna. So Reyna is one of the most commonly used character because this character's buff is permanent and it's very, very impactful. So that's why it does not apply to both of them, and therefore you don't usually see Reyna with Dino even before Lily May's release itself. So I don't see Reyna being good with Lily May as well, because I think Reyna's ultimate actually counters Lily May's ability a little bit, because like for example in mid battle, Lily May is using the Rainstorm Ballet, then suddenly your Reyna traps all the enemies, and then all of a sudden you got no target, she will just come back to the original spot. So that was what happened in one of my arena runs itself. So I think that's very interesting. But if the enemy is not there and she uses the ultimate, she'll just teleport back to the original location. Okay, so that's something that you guys want to know as well. So yeah, this is really, really accurate. So if you guys want to find out and read it more yourself, please refer to the comprehensive guide on who procs Lily May and Diano's growth yourself. Okay, so very, very accurate. Props to March over here. Thank you very much for this post, and that's it for this video. Just a simple run through of Lily May's ability, as well as the EX10 PSA bug for those of you guys who are planning to upgrade her EX weapon today. Thank you very much for tuning in. Remember, as usual, to like and subscribe. See you guys again in my next video. Bye guys.